My name is Marissa Cole, and for years I convinced myself I simply wasn't seeing what was right in front of me. Every single Christmas Eve unfolded the same way at my sister's immaculate home, where my children were considered too wild, too chaotic, too much of everything that didn't belong in her carefully curated world. I was welcomed only when there was a pot to stir or a floor to sweep, never as someone who actually mattered. Then came the message that cut differently than all the others. There was no space for me or my children, as though we were clutter to be tucked away and forgotten, as if my babies were nothing more than an inconvenience. My sister followed it up with her own suggestion: leave the children behind with their nanny and show up to cook dinner the way you always do. Because in their eyes, I wasn't a sister or a daughter. I was unpaid help dressed up in family clothing, and my father capped it all off perfectly, telling me not to burden them with guilt while reminding me that they still expected their presence. This was a man who had never once shown up for a single birthday my children celebrated. I sat there staring at my phone with my heart hammering in my chest, feeling my son's small hand pulling at my sleeve as he asked whether we'd be visiting Grandma that year. I pulled him close, smiled as warmly as I could manage, and told him not this time. No tears fell, no voices were raised, not a single argument left my lips. Instead, I quietly opened my laptop and began making plans, because if they had decided to ring in the new year without us, they were about to discover what the world looked like when I was no longer in it. That night, I made a list, not fueled by bitterness, but by absolute clarity. 10 years of dinners prepared and kitchens scrubbed. 10 years of babysitting, handcrafted gifts, and quiet sacrifices. The $3,000 I lent my sister when her boutique was weeks away from collapse. The dental emergency I covered for my mother when insurance had lapsed. The field trip I pulled my son from so I could cook an elaborate spread for my father's last-minute work function. I had never once asked for a thank you. I had never once complained. But that chapter was closing. I started with the small things. Every streaming account, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all registered under my name and paid from my card, went dark. The shared family calendar I had been maintaining for free, the one that tracked allergies and medication schedules and every important date, simply disappeared. Then I contacted my sister's boutique landlord with a brief and factual message, letting him know the co-signer on her lease would be stepping back. I sent one last message to the group chat telling them not to worry, that I had prepared something truly unforgettable this year. Nobody responded. They assumed it was an empty threat. They had no idea what was already in motion, because the gift I had decided to give them this time was aliens, self-respect, and real consequences. New Year's Eve arrived like a breath of fresh air. My children and I spent the morning baking, dancing around the kitchen in our pajamas, and laughing without an audience or an agenda. No performance, no tension, just peace. Meanwhile, my phone was lighting up with panicked messages from my sister asking where the honey-glazed turkey was, telling me our mother was upset, accusing me of being dramatic, demanding to know where the case of champagne had gone. I left every single one of them unanswered. I was busy wrapping presents for my boys. Simple and meaningful things: a hand-drawn treasure map, a craft kit made from scratch, a framed photograph of the three of us at our favorite park. Around 5 in the evening, the calls began. My sister, then my mother, then my father. All of them went to voicemail. By 6:47, the first real consequences arrived. My sister's boutique page on social media vanished. Her followers gone with it. Her booking platform offline. Then her landlord called to confirm that her lease was no longer on solid ground. My mother rang again in a panic, demanding to know what I had done and what kind of night I thought this was. I told her calmly that it was the night they chose to celebrate without me. Then I switched off my phone and turned the music up, because for the first time in what felt like forever, I had chosen my children and myself, and they were going to understand exactly what that meant. January 1st arrived, and so did 27 missed calls, 53 unread messages, and 3 voicemails soaked in panic. Dinner had been catastrophic. The caterer had canceled last minute because my sister had assumed I would appear regardless. The turkey burned beyond saving. The side dishes were forgotten entirely. The champagne remained in a warehouse because it had been ordered through my wholesale account. My mother wept in front of guests. My father shouted at the staff. My sister ended the evening screaming at her husband and pointing fingers in every direction but her own. I spent that morning in my robe drinking tea and watching cartoons with my boys. I posted a single photograph that day. Just the 3 of us on the balcony, holding mugs, surrounded by soft fairy lights and genuine peace. The caption read that science and self-worth had turned out to be the finest celebration. Responses flooded in from old friends, neighbors, and relatives I hadn't heard from in years, all of them saying I looked genuinely happy and that I had always deserved better. By January 2nd, the fallout had spread beyond the family. Screenshots of my sister's behavior were circulating online alongside clips of her berating staff and deflecting blame onto everyone around her. A local influencer shared it with a caption about what happens when you mistreat the very people who built everything around you. My mother, meanwhile, had discovered that her access to my Amazon account, which she had been using regularly for candles, imported teas, and skincare, was gone. My father found himself staring at years of tax files he had never once organized himself, always relying on the templates I built for him. He texted me saying that family was supposed to help family. I sent back his own words about still expecting their guests. He understood the irony. I had also removed my name from every piece of family trust paperwork. There was no reason to co-sign for people who had treated me like seasonal hired help. Then my aunt appeared at my front door, the one woman in the family who had always treated me like I actually belonged. She told me she had heard everything and asked if she would be allowed to help me build something new. Something shifted inside me in that moment. Not revenge, recovery. With her encouragement, I launched my own catering company, built on a decade of skill that had gone unrecognized for far too long. No family discounts, no guilt-driven obligations, no hollow smiles across holiday tables. My first booking was a private birthday dinner for a well-known local author. Word moved quickly. Within weeks, my calendar was full, every single client coming through referrals. My sister's boutique, meanwhile, continued to unravel. Suppliers ended their relationships with her. Online sales dried up. Her influence evaporated. She reached out suggesting we meet and clear things up. I said nothing. My mother sent voice messages layered in guilt, asking me to remember that blood is blood and to please just come back. But they had never treated me as blood. They had treated me as hands that worked and a mouth that stayed quiet. My father tried a softer approach, promising to include us in the following year's celebrations, insisting that we belong there. I listened to all of it without responding, not because I was still wounded, but because watching the panic in their voices felt like its own form of justice. I didn't block any of them. I wanted them to be able to see what came next. By spring, my name was on a billboard. My company had a full team, a real kitchen, and a waitlist of clients. My boys had stopped wondering why their grandparents never reached out. They were too busy helping me test new recipes and tucking handwritten notes into dessert boxes for customers who genuinely appreciated the work. Then one afternoon, a call came through from a number I didn't recognize. It was my mother, her voice thinner and quieter than I had ever heard it. My father had collapsed. They were at the hospital. There was no demand attached to the call, no guilt woven through the words, just a soft and simple question asking if I would come. I did, not for him, for myself. To sit across from the man who had once demanded presence and see him now surrounded by machines and regret. He looked at me and whispered that he had been wrong. I didn't cry, I didn't erupt. I nodded and stood up and walked out. In the hallway, my sister stopped me. Her mascara had run down her cheeks and her voice cracked when she said she missed me, that they had treated me terribly and that she wanted a chance to begin again. I looked at her for a long moment and told her quietly that I had already started over, just without her. Because healing doesn't always announce itself, and justice doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it simply turns and walks away and never looks back. A year later, I stood on the rooftop of a venue I owned. Below me, a celebration filled with music and laughter was in full swing. My team moved through the crowd with pride. My boys danced in sparkly hats, clutching mugs of hot cocoa. I wore a silver dress and not a single apron. A guest I didn't recognize approached me and asked if I was Marissa. When I said yes, she smiled and told me that the food, the team, the entire evening was breathtaking, and that she had heard my story and was grateful I had chosen to rise. I looked out over the city thinking about all the years I had spent trying to earn a seat at someone else's table. Now I had built my own. That same night, my sister posted an old photograph of the whole family crowded together at a long table and wrote that the new year simply wasn't the same without me. I didn't reply, because this year I wasn't cooking for the people who had thrown me away. I wasn't making myself smaller so they could feel more comfortable. I was celebrating with people who had always seen my value, even when my own family refused to. This time there were no gifts, no apologies, no explanations, only distance, only peace, and the quiet and unshakable triumph of a woman who finally understood that family isn't always the people you're born into. Sometimes it's simply the people who are still standing and cheering when you finally allow yourself to rise.